Hello and welcome to another edition of Living with Environmental Change. In tonight's episode, we'll be looking at the increasing number of issues in and along the banks of the River Yangtze and their potential impacts for the future generations who will be living along it. The Yangtze River is one of a select few known as mega rivers, and with good reason. As the longest river in Asia and the third largest river in the world, it has a drainage basin area of 1,808,500 square kilometres and is 6,300 kilometres in length, running from the centre to the east coast of China. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that it is home to over 400 million people and generates approximately 40% of China's GDP, or gross domestic product. It is the hub of Chinese industry and is the fastest growing economic development zone in China. The river operates as a vast transport route connecting factories from the west of China all the way through to Shanghai at the mouth of the Yangtze, and is also known as one of the world's busiest container ports. This is a river with great influence on the country it runs through, and its ecosystem services, or using the environment for social or economic benefit, has been described as many as incredibly valuable. So the history of the human habitation along the Yangtze is long and rich. 1949 saw the birth of the People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong. As the chairman of the Communist Party of China, Mao initiated waves of extreme anti-capitalist policies. Among these were the execution of over 1 million agricultural landlords and the confiscation and collectivization of private farmland. Mao aimed to copy the Soviet Union's model of economic development and initiated a transition from agricultural economy to an economy based primarily on heavy industry. These economic policies were laid out in a series of 5-year plans, which are still being put into use today. The second 5-year plan, or the Great Leap Forward, saw a huge famine in which up to 40 million people died. Following Mao's death in 1976, Deng Xiaoping introduced a reform and opening up policy which decollectivized land, permitted entrepreneurialism, and encouraged foreign investment. This resulted in rapid industrialization and steady economic growth. In subsequent years, the economy has shifted from heavy industries such as steel and iron production to light and industry and consumer goods. In the 1980s to the 1990s, the reform and opening up policy dictated the privatization of state-owned industries and removing of price controls and protectionist policies to allow freer trade into and out of the country. It is these combinations of increased development and interaction with the environment that is resulting in large environmental change. The three most significant of these are climatic changes, rapid industrialization, and the corresponding construction of hydroelectric dams, most notably the Three Gorges Dam. These three key changes have had huge impacts, and further changes including habitat loss, species extinctions, a changing water flow regime, increased atmospheric temperatures as a result of climate change, which has also increased the frequency of flooding and drought, in addition to high levels of chemicals and effluents in the water supply. However, all of these have occurred in the name of development, and for every one environmental issue, there is a benefit for society. This is obviously a very topical issue we decided to discuss. Allow me to introduce you to our expert panel this evening. Mr. Martin Kennedy from WWF, Mr. James Ursel from HSBC, and Professor King, an academic specialising in climate change. Thank you all for joining us this evening. So after having seen all the information you've just heard and using all of your expert opinions, the first question we have for you all this evening is, do you feel that the environmental costs involved in development justify the economic benefits?
Well, from the WWF standpoint, it does appear that governments have decided that the benefits of economic growth do outweigh the cost of the environment. But we don't think that the governments have really thought critically about the damages that this industrial and economic growth is having on the environment. We understand that money does make the world go round, and for a country to be a successful, prosperous country with a strong social and economic growth, then there needs to be a stable economy. Yes. But we can't put a price on the environment, which is what we're doing now. We are deciding that the benefits, the money we are getting from this economy and industry is worth the damage caused to the environment. And in terms of the Yangtze, we look, the river is so polluted from all the industry and agriculture that people can no longer swim or do whatever. In the years gone by, people used to wash their clothes and even just wash in the river. But now, due to all the industrial and agricultural pollutions, there is carcinogenics such as arsenic and lead just in the river at levels much higher than any other river that we would class polluted in the Western world. We can't just stand by and allow this pollution to take over our environment. Obviously, one of the most easily measurable aspects of the environment is the biodiversity, the number of species in the area. It has been shown that the biodiversity do actually regulate the ecosystem. So areas with high biodiversity will have functionally stable ecosystems, which we can benefit from. You mentioned the ecosystem services at the beginning, and this pollution is damaging these ecosystem services, and no economy can survive without any of these ecosystem services. The damage to the biodiversity is probably the most well-documented case is the death of the Yangtze River dolphin in 2007, which was the first large mammal to go extinct in recorded history. So we need to act now to prevent further biodiversity loss and save these ecosystem services.
Very interesting point you put forward there. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Ersel, do you have any response to that or comments for the question that I asked you?
Well, HSBC has been working closely with the Chinese government, and China's priority right now is to improve its people's standard of living. HSBC believes this is only possible through economic development. So it's important to remember that 30% of Chinese population live on less than $2 a day. So I mean, you mentioned the rapid industrialization that's happening on the Yangtze. This is providing jobs, it's providing opportunities for people in rural areas to become wealthier, to have a better standard of living, and really for the whole society to develop. Now, with regards to the pollution element, yes, this is a problem. You know, we've heard some of the key issues involved with factory waste and agricultural runoff. But I mean, you need to take a long-term view on it. I mean, these are immediate problems which are affecting, you know, the Chinese people and the Yangtze River. But China's economy has gradually evolved from an agricultural through to heavy industry, and now there are in fact some high-tech industries and service industries emerging. Now, what we normally see when we have a trajectory of increased income per capita is environmental degradation increases, and then once the population is sufficiently wealthy, environmental degradation will decrease again. This is something called the environmental Kuznets curve. I hope I've pronounced that right.
Yes.
So basically, the pollution problem in China will only get better once the population is wealthier. And the population will only be able to get wealthier, you know, once industry has expanded sufficiently. So, from our perspective, pollution is a regrettable yet necessary cost of economic development in China, specifically in the Yangtze region.
I need to comment on this. You comment on the environmental Kuznets curve, saying that the economy needs to grow in order for and the damage to the environment also needs to grow in order to eventually reach a point where we can start thinking about the environment and cutting back on these pollutants and other degrading factors. Whereas this curve is based on past data, which is the Western Industrial Revolution, where the only thing we could do with our waste was dump it in rivers, dump it in landfill, just pollute the environment. And to our knowledge, that was okay. We could put it in the river, and it would would travel down to the ocean and it would be gone forever. That's no more pollution. But we know now that that's not the case. We can't claim that we are now ignorant. Well, we are still ignorant to these environmental problems, because we know that they're there. And we have the technology and the means to address them. But China seems to be hiding behind this. Well, the West did it, so why can't we? But is that really, from the knowledge we know now, is that sensible? It seems irresponsible to just ignore all these problems we're causing just because someone else did.
I hear your point, and I mean, I think, often China is portrayed in a very negative light as a massive industrial polluter. However, I also think that what the West needs to realise is they haven't solved their pollution problem. They've just exported it to China. The majority of the goods produced in Chinese factories, or at least a significant proportion, will be shipped and exported to Western countries. Car parts, electronics, leather, paper. So for the West who are consuming these products to then say, oh well, actually, China should increase tighter environmental regulations, seems fatuous. And this is a point Premier Wen Jiabao raised, that the West shouldn't consider that it has solved its pollution problem simply by moving the industrial processes to China.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Professor King, as an academic who specialises in climate change and the impacts that come from it, what are your comments on whether the environmental costs involved in development justify the economic benefits?
I'd just like to put across the main point that climate change over the Yangtze is a big issue that we need to consider in this argument. Much of the issues that the Yangtze region has faced has occurred since the construction of many of the dams and also the industrialisation that's happened recently. In fact, a study by WWF in 2009 looked at temperature increase over the Yangtze area, and they found that there had been a significant increase in air temperature of 0.33 degrees C during the 1990s, and a further increase of 0.71 degrees C over the 2001 to 2005 period. Of course, this brings about the issue of droughts as well as other impacts. In fact, just a couple of years ago, in 2001, China experienced its worst drought for 50 years, and there was much speculation as to whether the dams, as well as the other industrial activity, was to blame for this. And of course, it's not just droughts. Other extreme weather events and flooding, as well as environmental effects such as destabilisation of the Yangtze slopes, are likely to occur.
Thank you very much, Professor King. There were very interesting points you put across, and we can obviously see already that there is disagreement between you all about what can be considered a cost and what is considered a benefit. So, having discussed that, do you therefore believe, any of you, that there can be a sustainable equilibrium between environmental, economic and social development, especially seeing as economic and environmental development don't tend to happen until there is social stability? Mr. Martin-Kennedy.
Well, as Professor King has said, the climate is changing. In order to strike an equilibrium, it has to be a stable equilibrium. At the moment, the Chinese government, with respect along the Yangtze River, they have decided that concentrating on industry now and growing the economy is the best way to go, and dealing with the damage they're doing to the environment we'll deal with that later, and that's the way forward. But that is not a stable lifestyle. You can't sustain that method. The climates are changing. In the relatively short period of time that the Yangtze has been industrialised, as Professor King has said, we've seen notable changes in climate and temperature and a manner of other things. And climates regulate everything. They regulate all ecosystems. Without climate, or if the climate changes drastically, then all these ecosystems will reach a threshold and then fall into a state which we can no longer receive any benefits from, and no economy can survive without the help of ecosystem services. I mean, in agriculture, you've got pollination, you've got natural pesticides with insect predation and or along those lines. And without these ecosystem services, the cost to the economy would be catastrophic. Yeah, we need to change now. The priorities of the government is not right. We need to decide that the environment cannot be left for later. It needs to be decided now that the environment is going to take the forefront of the government's initiatives to provide a sustainable future and social development.
Yes, so it would seem that WWF's stance is that an equilibrium is essential.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Elson?
Well, whilst I agree with Mr. Kennedy's claims about ecosystem services playing an essential role in the economy, and I think it's a very valid point, I also think Mr. Kennedy has significantly overlooked the policies and infrastructure which the Chinese government, partly funded by HSBC, has implemented in order to mitigate and adapt to climate changes and environmental changes in the Yangtze region. Perhaps most noticeably among these policies is the construction of hydroelectric power, sourcing the majority of, at the moment, China sources only 22% of its power from renewable, mainly hydroelectric. So the remaining 70-80% is coal-based. Now, in the next 30 to 50 years, China aims to source the majority of its power from renewable energy sources, from clean energy sources. So this means basically building more dams in the Yangtze. Now, hundreds of millions of tons of greenhouse gases have been prevented from being emitted as a direct result of shifting from coal to hydroelectric power. So, I mean, this is one of the ways the Chinese government has taken a long-term view on how best to mitigate against climate changes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ursel. So it would seem to be that from your standpoint, sustainable equilibrium can be achieved, but it is a long-term process.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you very much. Professor King, you've heard both arguments and discussion. In your professional opinion, do you have any further comments to add on this question and matter?
Well, I understand Mr. Ursul's point of view, but climate change is happening now, and it's only going to get worse in the future. Many studies have predicted the impacts and future air temperature over the Yangtze with shocking results. For example, one study by Ying in 2004 looked at predicting climate change along the middle and the lower reaches of the Yangtze over the 21st century. He used 7 global climate models provided by the IPCC to assess the likely changes over the river, and he found mean temperatures would rise 2.2 degrees C by 2050 and 4.5 degrees C by 2100. Of course, these increased temperatures are going to cause further problems, such as accelerated melting of glaciers and permafrost, particularly in the headwaters region and over the Tibetan Plateau. In fact, up to 11.6 kilometres of glacial area is expected to be lost by 2060. And this brings about the problem that the dams in the region are not actually capable of dealing with these significant changes to runoff. Overall, this brings about the question of what we consider to be sustainable today may not even be sustainable in the future.
A very interesting point. Well put forward. Thank you very much. I think we can all agree that whether you're invested in social or environmental preservation, to protect and flourish both aspects, we must adapt and mitigate in the Yangtze to ensure that both flourish. So, in all of your opinions, do you believe that any adaptation measures or mitigation measures should or could be taken? And can the inhabitants of the Yangtze truly live with environmental change? Mr. Kennedy, Professor King there, made quite a good few interesting scenarios about climate change in the future. This could have a serious potential impact on the environment, one would presume.
Yes, these impacts cannot be ignored, but WWF understand that this is no small matter. There's no just one quick solution to fix everything. We understand that a country needs industry. You can't just get rid of the industry and clean up the river and the country will be fine. So we have a few suggestions which we think would be ideal for the Yangtze region to help stabilise and improve the environmental situation out there, which will overall also impact the social development as having a nice area to just go and enjoy is one of the ecosystem services. And even though you can't put a price on it, we do believe that needs to be preserved. So our methods to mitigate the damage already done is we think that as biodiversity is so key, so important to us preserving stable ecosystems, we need to conquer that first. We believe that the fragmentation caused by the building of these hydroelectric dams needs to be reversed, and obviously they can't be ripped down, but we feel there is definitely ways that maybe controlling the flows through the hydroelectric dams so we get more of a natural flow through the river will reconnect these lakes to the river and preserve some of the biodiversity, as some of the fish and other species in the water need these lakes and rivers to reproduce and to feed. So that'd be one solution we believe would help greatly.
So it seems that WWF is using more immediate mitigating strategies. Do you have any adaptive measures in place?
Yes, we've also got a few of them, although we do feel that the mitigating strategies need to have highest priority, as preventing further damage rather than reducing damage is more important. But we do believe that the pollution needs to be dealt with, because obviously you can't just stop industry polluting because they're byproducts of whatever they're making. But we do believe that there can be more can be done to contain this pollution, to filter it, to treat it, and move it somewhere else where it's not just being dumped straight into the river untreated. And also policies need to be put in place to regulate the fertiliser usage and insecticide and herbicide usage in agriculture, because at the moment a large excess is being washed off into the river, which is causing untold damage to the ecosystems in that river.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Assel, do you have any comments to make on this matter?
Well, my opinion is that we can only hope to have effective adaptation strategies. It really is too late for mitigation. You know, the wheels of industry and economic growth are turning, and this is just a brute fact. Now, I think we've discussed some more long-term policies China has for sourcing renewable energy. We also believe that we should introduce more green technologies, so things like waste purification, filtering of industrial toxic chemicals before it goes back into the Yangtze, and you know, these are fantastic ideas, and if they can be utilised for a little expenditure, that's fine. Our one concern is that it will in fact impede China's economic growth.
Okay, thank you very much. That's equally a valid point. Professor King, obviously as an expert who specialises in this area, do you know of any policies that are already currently in place within the Yangtze region?
Well, I think we do need to give some credit to the Chinese government, as they are working towards creating a more stable society in face of the unpredictable climate. There are a lot of policy currently in place, particularly a movement called the 12th 50-year plan, and they're also involved in the UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol. The 12th 50-year plan is their main mitigation and adaptation strategies, and these have included encouraging renewable sources and green processes in the transport industry, the home and industry in general, as well as protecting natural areas and creating stricter laws and regulations around industrial and agricultural activity, as well as regulating water resources around the Yangtze.
That's great. Thank you very much. Can you possibly elaborate more on these processes that are involved?
Yeah, policies and regulations have been put in place with regards to industry and agriculture. For example, quotas for fertiliser use and chemical use on farms, as well as quotas on pollutants released from factories. Industrial sites that are responsible for producing chemicals which lead to processes such as eutrophication. They've been told to have specific plants built on site to treat any of the dangerous chemicals that they might produce. And of course, the Chinese government is involved with the Kyoto Protocol, which has included schemes such as emission trading and the Clean Development Mechanism. In terms of the Three Gorges Dam, although it does have negative impacts, of course, I believe in the long run it will benefit the Yangtze region. We just have to make sure that to optimise its benefits, we have to ensure its maintenance and ensure that it's always running at its full capacity.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor King. That was really interesting to finally see actually what is being done rather than what should actually be done. So thank you very much, everyone, for your input this evening. It was really refreshing and enlightening to hear many different viewpoints as to what should and could be done on the Yangtze River. There is certainly much we can take from tonight's issue of living with environmental change, and it can certainly be seen that there are many issues with different impacts on the Yangtze, each of which will involve governmental or NGO investment to solve, such as WWF. It is now for the viewer at home to decide what could and should be done, or whether it is for us at all to decide whether it is just for the Chinese government alone and not global perspective. And the bottom line, ultimately, is that the river is at a tipping point after which it may not be able to adapt to the high levels of pollutants, differing flow regimes, and varying climate. Systems may well begin to collapse, and it seems to be that the sooner these issues are addressed, the smaller the impacts will be that can be made into greener, mitigating technology in the near future. The Yangtze is a natural beauty that should be preserved, respected, and it's our duty to help it to adapt to a new, changing world. Thank you for watching. Good night.